This is the story of how I methodically destroyed the two people who betrayed me most, and why every calculated move was worth it. But let me start from the beginning, because the devil's always in the details. The basement was exactly what I'd been looking for. Cool, dry, with thick stone walls that had stood since 1892. The elderly seller, Mr. Kowalski, flicked on the ancient light switch and the bare bulb cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Original foundation, he said, his Polish accent still thick after 50 years in Boston. Built when this whole neighborhood was just Polish and Irish families. I ran my hand along the stone wall. Perfect. I'll take it. The old man's eyebrows shot up. Don't you want to see the upstairs again? Check the plumbing? I'm sure it's fine. Let's go sign the papers. An hour later, I owned a 3-story brownstone in Boston's North End, complete with original hardwood floors, a working fireplace, and most importantly, that basement. The asking price was fair, maybe even generous, but I had plans that required privacy and space that my suburban split level couldn't provide. My phone buzzed as Mr. Kowalski handed me the keys. Where are you? Sarah's voice had that edge it always got when she couldn't immediately locate me. Grabbing lunch downtown. What's up? I'm going to be late tonight. Michelle's having problems with the divorce and we're meeting for drinks to talk it through. Of course they were. Sarah's book club had become divorce support group had become weekly excuse generator. Want me to pick up Thai food for when you get home? Don't wait up. This might go late. The line went dead. 22 years of marriage, and my wife couldn't even be bothered with goodbye anymore. If I'd known then what I know now, I might have laughed. Instead, I just pocketed the phone and walked through my new property, already planning renovations. Sarah and I met in 1998 at a corporate retreat in the Berkshires. I was 31, she was 28, and I thought I'd hit the lottery. Beautiful, smart, ambitious, everything a guy climbing the corporate ladder could want in a wife. She worked in marketing at a competing firm, which made our romance feel like something out of a movie. The wedding was perfect. 200 guests at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, honeymoon in Ireland, and a house in Newton that we bought with combined savings and help from both sets of parents. For the first few years, we were the couple everyone envied. I built my career as a project manager at Morrison & Associates, a construction consulting firm that specialized in historic renovations. 20 years of steady work, good relationships with clients, and a reputation for bringing projects in on time and under budget. Sarah climbed her own ladder in pharmaceutical marketing, eventually landing at Apex Solutions where she managed campaigns for their biggest clients. Our son Kevin was born in 2003. Watching him take his first steps in our living room, teaching him to throw a baseball in the backyard, helping with homework at the kitchen table, those were the best years of my life. Every cliché about fatherhood turned out to be true. But looking back now, I can see when things started changing. Kevin hit middle school and suddenly preferred video games to catch. Sarah's work hours got longer, her business trips more frequent. I told myself it was normal. Marriages evolve, kids grow up, careers demand more. What I didn't realize was that my marriage had been dying for years, and I was the only one who didn't know it. The truth came out on a Tuesday in October, purely by accident. Kevin was away at college sophomore year at UMass, and I was working late in my home office when I heard Sarah's car in the driveway. She was supposed to be in Chicago until Thursday, so I went downstairs to see if her trip had been cut short. The front door was still closed, but I could hear voices outside. Sarah was talking to someone, her voice low and intimate in a way I hadn't heard in years. I can't keep doing this, Marcus. It's killing me. My blood went cold. Marcus Sullivan was my boss at Morrison & Associates. 20-year friendship, godfather to Kevin, the man who'd promoted me to senior project manager just last month. Just a little longer, sweetheart. The Peterson project wraps up in December, then we can make our move. What about David? He's going to be devastated. Marcus laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. David's a good guy, but let's be honest, he's been coasting for years. This promotion was charity. He'll land on his feet. I stood frozen in my own hallway, listening to my wife and best friend plan my professional and personal destruction. They talked for another 5 minutes about timing, about Kevin's reaction, about selling the house. When I finally heard car doors slam and Sarah's key in the lock, I was already back upstairs, pretending to work. "How was Chicago?" I called down. "Exhausting," she replied. "I'm going straight to bed." I sat in the dark for hours that night, replaying every interaction from the past year. Sarah's sudden interest in fitness. Marcus's overly friendly behavior at company events. The way they both pushed for Kevin to go away to school instead of commuting from home. 22 years of marriage, 20 years of friendship, and they were planning to throw me away like yesterday's newspaper. But here's the thing about project management: you learn to think systematically. Problems have solutions. Timelines can be adjusted. And sometimes, the best way to handle a difficult client is to let them think they're in control while you engineer the outcome you actually want. I took a personal day and drove to the old family farm in Vermont. My father had passed 5 years earlier, leaving the property to me and my sister. We'd been renting it to a local family, but the lease was up and we hadn't decided what to do next. I spent the day walking the property, thinking. 200 acres, a farmhouse that needed work, and a barn that my grandfather had built with his own hands. Dad had always said the land would be worth something someday when development reached this far north. Turned out someday was now. I called my sister that evening. "Jenny, what would you say to selling the farm?" "Are you kidding? That place has been in the family for 3 generations. Dad left it to both of us, and I need my half. There's a developer interested in the whole parcel." It wasn't exactly true yet, but I knew how to make it true. Jenny agreed, reluctantly, and within 2 weeks I had a signed purchase agreement for $1.2 million. My share, after taxes and Jenny's half, would be enough to fund what I was already thinking of as the Marcus and Sarah show. Phase 1 was information gathering. I hired a private investigator, not some seedy character from a crime novel, but a former FBI agent named Patricia Chen who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Within 2 weeks, she had a complete picture of my wife's affair. It had been going on for 3 years. 3 years of business trips that weren't business trips, client dinners that were romantic getaways, and text messages that would have made a sailor blush. Marcus had been planning to leave his own wife since last Christmas, waiting for his daughter to graduate high school. But the real gut punch was Kevin. According to Patricia's research, Sarah and Marcus had been careful to schedule their affair around Kevin's school breaks, making sure he never suspected anything. But they'd also been planning his future without consulting me. Marcus had connections at several architectural firms, and they'd already discussed getting Kevin summer internships that would steer him away from construction management. They were erasing me from my own son's life, one decision at a time. Patricia also discovered something else. Marcus had been using company resources to support his affair. Corporate credit cards for hotel rooms, expense accounts for romantic dinners, even company vehicles for weekend getaways. It was a fireable offense at Morrison and Associates, where the founders' old-school values still governed company policy. I had enough evidence to destroy both of them immediately. But immediate satisfaction wasn't what I wanted. I wanted them to understand what they'd lost, and I wanted that understanding to last. The Peterson project Marcus had mentioned was a $50 million renovation of a historic hotel in downtown Boston. Morrison and Associates was the prime contractor, and I was the lead project manager. It was the biggest contract in company history, and Marcus had been positioning it as his legacy project before moving to the senior partner track. What Marcus didn't know was that the client, Harrison Peterson, was an old family friend. My father had done the original restoration work on Peterson's first hotel back in the 1980s, and Harrison had never forgotten the craftsmanship and integrity my dad brought to the job. When I called Harrison and asked for a private meeting, he agreed immediately. "Your father was one of the finest men I ever worked with," Harrison said over lunch at his club. "What can I do for you?" I laid out the situation carefully. Not the personal details, but the professional ones. Marcus was planning major changes at Morrison and Associates. The company culture that had attracted clients like Harrison was going to shift toward a more aggressive, profit-driven model. "I've been thinking about starting my own firm," I told him. "Smaller, more personal. The way my father would have run things." Harrison leaned back in his chair. "What would you need to make that happen?" "A signature project. Something that would establish credibility with other historic property owners." He smiled. "The Peterson project is already approved for Morrison and Associates. But if there were quality control issues, or if I lost confidence in their leadership..." We shook hands over dessert. Phase 2 was corporate sabotage, but the legal kind. I spent the next month documenting every questionable decision Marcus had made over the past year. Cutting corners on safety inspections. Pushing through change orders without proper approval. Most importantly, using company resources for personal expenses. I also started building relationships with Morrison's other senior staff. Casual conversations about the company's direction, subtle questions about their satisfaction with current leadership. What I discovered was that several people had been unhappy with Marcus's management style but felt powerless to challenge him. The corporate culture at Morrison and Associates was built on trust and handshake deals. Marcus had been exploiting that culture for years, and people were starting to notice. Meanwhile, at home, I played the oblivious husband perfectly. I took on more household responsibilities, suggested date nights that Sarah politely declined, and asked about her work with just the right amount of interest. The hardest part was watching her lie to my face every day. But every fake smile, every fabricated business trip, every "I love you" that meant nothing was just more evidence of who she really was. By Thanksgiving, I was ready for Phase 3. Harrison Peterson called Marcus on Monday morning and requested an emergency meeting. There were concerns about project management oversight that needed to be addressed immediately. Marcus panicked. He called me into his office within an hour. "David, I need you to pull together every document related to the Peterson project. Every email, every change order, every inspection report. Harrison's having cold feet about something." I spent the day compiling files, making sure to include several of Marcus's more questionable decisions. Late expense reports, safety shortcuts, communication gaps with subcontractors. Nothing criminal, but enough to paint a picture of sloppy management. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Tuesday night, Sarah announced another book club emergency. "Really?" I asked. "2 nights this week?" She avoided eye contact. "Michelle's ex is being difficult about custody. We're all rallying around her." "Of course you are." She kissed my cheek, the first physical contact we'd had in weeks, and headed out the door. I waited 10 minutes, then followed her. The Morrison and Associates office building has a parking garage with excellent sight lines from the street. I parked across the road and watched Sarah's BMW pull in at 8:15 p.m. Marcus's Range Rover was already there. They left together at 11:30, Sarah's car following us toward the highway. I knew where they were going. Patricia had identified their favorite hotel in Lexington, but I didn't need to follow them. I had enough photographs already. Wednesday's meeting was everything I'd hoped for. Harrison Peterson was polite but firm. The project timeline was slipping, costs were escalating, and he'd heard rumors about management changes at Morrison and Associates that concerned him. Perhaps it would be better to bring in fresh perspective, he suggested. Someone with a more hands-on approach. Marcus fought hard. 20-year track record, established relationships, commitment to excellence. But every argument he made just highlighted how little actual oversight he'd been providing. What if we made David the primary point of contact? Marcus offered desperately. He's been managing the day-to-day operations anyway. Harrison looked at me with perfectly feigned surprise. "Mr. Collins, would you be interested in taking on that level of responsibility?" "I'd be honored," I replied. "Though I should mention that I've been considering some career changes myself." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Career changes?" "Well, this is probably the wrong time to bring it up, but I've been offered a partnership opportunity with a boutique firm. More autonomy, equity stake, chance to work directly with clients like Mr. Peterson. It was beautiful. Marcus couldn't object without looking petty, and Harrison was nodding approvingly at my entrepreneurial spirit. Perhaps we should discuss transitioning the Peterson project to your new firm, Harrison suggested. Assuming you can provide the same level of service with better oversight. Marcus tried to salvage something. David, we should talk privately before you make any hasty decisions. But it was too late. Harrison was already asking about my timeline, my staffing plans, my vision for completing his project. By the end of the meeting, Morrison and Associates had lost their biggest client, and Marcus was staring professional ruin in the face. That evening, I got the call I'd been expecting. David, we need to talk. Marcus's voice was strained. Can you come by the office? There are things you need to know. Can't it wait until morning? Sarah and I were just about to start a movie. Sarah's not home, David. Her car's been in our parking garage since yesterday. The silence stretched between us. Finally, I sighed. I'll be right over. I found them in Marcus's office. Sarah was crying, makeup smeared, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. Marcus stood behind his desk like it could protect him from what was coming. How long have you known? Sarah asked. I sat down across from them and opened the folder I'd brought. Photographs, hotel receipts, text message transcripts, credit card statements. 20 pages of documentation covering 3 years of betrayal. Long enough to plan accordingly, I said. Marcus tried to take control. David, I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that my wife and best friend have been planning to destroy my life while fucking each other in hotel rooms paid for with company money. Sarah flinched at the language. We never meant for it to happen this way. Which part? The affair, or getting caught? I stood up and walked to the window. Marcus's Range Rover and Sarah's BMW sat side by side in the parking garage, like some twisted symbol of their partnership. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Sarah, you're going to file for divorce and cite irreconcilable differences. No lawyers, no fighting over assets. You take your car, your clothes, and your 401k. I keep the house, my investments, and my dignity. David, that's not fair, Marcus protested. You can't just dictate terms. I turned back to them. Marcus, you're going to resign from Morrison and Associates tomorrow morning. Personal reasons, family obligations, whatever story helps you sleep at night. You're also going to recommend me as your replacement for any remaining projects. You're crazy if you think I'm going to destroy my own career. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. A draft email to Morrison's board of directors, complete with attachments documenting Marcus's misuse of company resources. Your career's already destroyed. The only question is whether you go out quietly or publicly. Sarah was sobbing now. What about Kevin? What are we going to tell Kevin? For the first time that evening, my composure cracked. You should have thought about Kevin before you decided his father wasn't worth loyalty or respect. I gathered my papers and headed for the door. You have until Friday to clear out of the house, Sarah. Marcus, I expect your resignation letter by noon tomorrow. David, wait, Sarah called. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, try to save the marriage. I stopped without turning around. The marriage died 3 years ago. You just forgot to tell me. I walked out of Morrison and Associates for the last time as an employee. By the following Friday, I was a partner in Collins and Peterson Restoration, with a $50 million project and a client base that respected integrity over politics. Sarah moved out on Thursday, taking only what I'd specified. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a note that said I'm sorry. I threw both in the trash without reading the rest. Marcus's resignation letter was a masterpiece of corporate speak, citing family obligations and new opportunities. The board accepted it immediately, and several people mentioned privately that they'd seen it coming. Kevin called that weekend. Sarah had told him about the divorce, but not the details. "Dad, are you okay? Mom said you guys just grew apart." "Sometimes people change, son. Your mother and I want different things now. Are you going to be all right on your own?" I looked around the house that was finally mine again. Empty, quiet, but clean. "I'm going to be fine, Kevin. Better than fine." 3 months later, Collins and Peterson Restoration completed the Peterson Hotel project 2 weeks ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget. Harrison Peterson recommended us to 6 other property owners, and our calendar filled up for the next 2 years. Marcus took a job with a mid-tier firm in Providence, a significant step down from his previous position. Sarah moved to an apartment in Cambridge and started seeing a therapist. According to Kevin, they're both doing fine, though they're no longer together. Apparently, without me as a common enemy, they discovered they didn't actually like each other very much. I still live in the Newton house, though I've renovated extensively. The basement workshop where I planned their downfall is now a home gym. The office where I discovered their betrayal is now a library filled with books on historic architecture and project management. Sometimes people ask if I ever regret the way I handled things. Could I have forgiven them? Tried to save the marriage? Taken the high road? The answer is simple. They made their choice long before I made mine. I just made sure their choice had consequences. And every morning when I wake up in my own house, start my own company, and live my own life without lies or betrayal, I remember that the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's getting everything.